First up, let's get the brief worked out. What is an ARPG? It stands for Action Role-Playing Game, but it does actually have its own sort of niche subgenre. In order to eliminate games like The Ascent or maybe The Wonderful 101, I'm sticking to one of the analog sticks being the movement and the other one technically not being a projectile fire weapon. Rogues and mages obviously come with some range, but we're going to count out as much of that twin stickery as we can. Additionally, ARPGs are normally played on a keyboard and mouse, but this is all about console and this is all about local co-op. Now, the Diablo series has been at the forefront of this genre for a number of decades. There are alternatives out there, however, to Diablo 4, and we saw a very large break between the third and fourth game. A lot happened in the industry, one of them being Chaosbane, which is the game we're looking at now. Set confidently in the Warhammer universe, you have the choice of mage and dual tomahawk wielding dwarf madman, and of course the traditional imperial soldier. It's very cool with its hotkeys and different movesets available for these classes. It's also very cool with its enemies and enemy types. If you're a fan of Inquisitor Martyr, you will recognize the Chaos Horde, particularly Nurgle, which is a great enemy to fight, giving you Nurglets, which are tiny little, I don't think that's their official name, right up to huge demon spawn, which are terrifying. It also is the first game to sport a brilliant inventory system that allows you both to trade and walk around independently of each other if one of them is in the menus and going through their various different high-end loot. You don't get disturbed, and it's also a 4-player game that allows this system on 4 areas of the screen, so you could all be independently going through the shop at the same time, and someone else could be walking around this map and still getting other things done. That's a hell of a achievement, and one of the issues with ARPGs is having to sit and wait for the other person to go through all their crap.
My link with other warriors too weak.
For 2019, it's also quite a good looking game. This didn't retail at full cost, I seem to remember, and it has been available on some of the subscription services, so you might not have been able to get to it yet or didn't want to pay full price for it. Now is a very good time, and it still holds up extremely well against everything else on the market. I know this is the start of the list, and I feel a bit bad for putting it this far back, but we've got some absolute beauties coming up. Yeah, I have gone and put Diablo 3 in a list of top games that aren't Diablo 4, remember. So there's a few differences with Diablo 3 and the new Diablo 4. One of the main ones is that the 4-player and 3-player local co-op has gone. You can only play with 2 people on the newest Diablo. With this, it supports 4 players very well, and it was something we were proper into because the screen handles it. When it was released originally on the base level PlayStation 4, it was a bit of an issue on performance, and it had some major PlayStation Pro boost put in, and it was advertised heavily. This was something that was really showing off the machine. Wipeout, Amiga Collection, and this were like the flagship releases.
Not yet.
Firing it up 6 years later was quite an experience. There's a big old patch for it, and you get so many freebies. You can see the Overwatch wings over there, and I've got the StarCraft ship as my little familiar. Can we have in the comments where that plant is from? Because I can't place it in a Blizzard game. What is its other difference to Diablo 4? Well, if you've seen my recent review, which I'll link in the comments, Diablo 4 is kind of a stunner visually compared to this. One of the first things you notice about going from game to game is the massive jump in graphics and the scaling. It felt a little bit out of sync for us. The enemies took a lot of damage before going away, and it was quite laborious with the bigger, the tougher, especially the special enemies, and they don't have their health above their head, so you're not too sure on the minion level who's going to die. With the big bosses, it's all there, but that was plainly obvious. Everything in Diablo 4, you know where it's up to on its death front. Diablo 3 also sports a different endgame to Diablo 4 with this rift system. It's like a reroll setup, and it's quite addictive because you can hunt down particular bits of loot that you want or fight some very cool major massive enemies, and it gets hard, proper hard. You will actually die in that area of the game, so it's worth revisiting, or you may have already peaked with the new Diablo and just want to see what all the fuss was about. Okay, it's time for Darksiders Genesis, an ARPG that does also feature a mount but split screen. Not dynamic unfortunately, but still something very cool to get involved with. You're independent, you are not joined at the hip, You are not going to get run off screen, and you're always going to be able to see what's happening in combat to a certain extent. It feels a lot more regimented. This game does get a lot of mentions. It's got a very deep campaign. I love the bosses and how the loot system works. It's got like an almost Monster Hunter-esque system with getting these runes from downed enemies and pumping those into powers. You get some really outlandish weaponry, and you do have quite a lot of projectile on that second character, so I'm pushing my rule a bit here. There's also no character select or class select. Can you believe that? You're either going to be a rogue or the tank dude, and it's quite a serious decision because their movesets are vastly different. It's one of the few ARPGs where I actually had to keep my button configuration on screen because you can genuinely get in a muddle. You've got like grappling claw that can pull enemies towards you. You've also got a projectile spinning boomerang from the Krell film. You don't know what to press sometimes when things get really busy because you have so many options. And I love the death animation. The whole game slows down when the player dies, giving a bit of urgency and a massive sort of come over here and help me out. Now obviously there is no 4-player, so this split screen is a bit unique, and I've never seen an ARPG like this. I think they went out on a bit of a limb, and I like the idea of the map being semi-open world. So you're not just pushed around these corridors. You can look at your objectives, go for different bosses, maybe come back to a section. It's a very cool idea. What it lacks in its character or class choice, it makes up for in different directions to take your special moves. So on L1 it opens up this sort of tree that you can access the face buttons on. They're all switched out. There's a lot going on with this game, and I really love its mid to end as well. Some of the enemies are massive and the bosses are very big, and it's cool to fight them autonomously, get round the back and not worry about running the other player off screen.
I'm trying to shoot you.
Single player is quite funny because you have to switch out the characters, or there's a compulsory swap if one of you dies. So there's only ever one character on screen at the time, and you use a hotkey system to then pull in the other player. And it's to do with different situations. You might want war for the big sort of close quarters material, and then you get in the range guy, who I think is probably voiced by Troy Baker. That's not a guess, that's just a statistic. You can't have 6 console characters in the list and Troy not be the voice of at least 6 of them. I will say, it's not the most polished of ARPGs, and this split screen system does sometimes cause some problems, and the game loves finisher moves and like mini QTEs, which can get a bit laborious, but for what it's doing and what it's done and how it looks, sounds and plays, this is a great ARPG, one of the only split screens on the market. Mate, don't muck about, come on. I'm not joking. Cat's Quest 2 is an absolutely epic ARPG and an amazing local co-op game. Check this scene out. I'm dead. Lewis is like, I'm like, don't rescue me, mate. Just kill that thing. He's like, he's torn, you know, and you have to stand in this circle to bring the other player back. I just sit on my ass and watch him do the boss. It was great fun. All the missions we did, we were underranked for, so it was super difficult. And this game comes with the most basic controls on earth, but they're brilliant to get your head around. L1's just your magic, and you've got a roll on X and an attack on square, that's kind of it. But you've got these slots, things start opening, the story's amazing, little open world map to go in secret caves, you get lost in it super fast. Its inventory system has got to be the most basic of any ARPG on the market, but that doesn't detract from how much depth you have with that combat. We were like, this is Dark Souls roll technique to try and get out of trouble. It's so reactionary, it's very arcade feeling. This is a long distance from that click 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 system. This one's actually genuinely fun as a campaign and quite white knuckle in places with puzzles and crazy looking bosses. There's also no way in hell you could persuade your kids to play some of those previous games, right? They just take one look at them and be like, no way. The noises, the colours, the vibrancy and the fun that anyone sees happening on screen with this, they're just like, I want to get involved. It's too much to ignore. There's actually quite a surprising amount of complication on weapon type because we migrated to one of us having range and the other one just a slightly more powerful melee attack weapon, but the element system on the magic also has a different placement when you whack it down on map, and the trees that are behind all of the armor and the upgrades and the look of your little dude are pretty damn deep. You're not going to be disappointed with how much you can unlock or find out in this game, and you will also be able to pull in people who aren't traditionally involved in this sort of ARPG. Its revive system is so much fun, meaning you have to hang around in that circle to get the meter up, so you end up sort of drive-by revive, almost swinging in, swinging out, and just try and get it up a bit. You will smile with Cat's Quest 2.
The air touched him, filling him and ruffling his feathers. He looked upon the Bergson, small and fragile, but so full of hope.
This is just an excuse for you to revel. I haven't spoken about Children of Morta for at least 2 days. It isn't technically an ARPG. Now this one's difficult, this one is not at the top of the list, and the next game beat this because the system involved in exploration with Children of Morta bears more in common with a roguelike system. It means that you have to make it to the end of the level or get the boss, otherwise it does not count as a win. So you can be stuck and not get forward. With games like Diablo 4, it kind of auto-saves at every stage. There's no risk in going into a level. With Children of Morta, it's a whole different kettle of fish. But everything else exists in place. Character choice that do take a while to unlock, so you're not giving them off the bat, and hotkey moves and amazing sets of skills that just look and sound beautiful. Easily the smallest game on this list by gigabyte, but one of the best with its ideas and look. So with that aforementioned roguelike system in mind, the risk in-game is huge. So you are genuinely crapping yourself about death, and the enemies just need to rub up against you for a nanosecond, and half your health is gone. You're constantly looking for health, you're constantly making sure your partner's got health, and it just breeds this brilliant teamwork, urgency, and of course panic. Also, when you talk about Diablo games, someone might say, oh, I play as the Necromancer. What that means is they hold one of the buttons down as the Necromancer. With this, if you don't understand your character's special moves and how they benefit you or get you out of trouble, you're going to lose. So getting your head round the class type is definitely a thing, and I really respect that. I've got channel subscribers or people who have been in my comments for years who haven't tried this yet. For God's sake, pull your fingers out, get hold of this. It's dirt cheap now, and come back to me and tell me what you think. Holy Christ, it is Nobody Saves the World, and what a fairy tale with this one. I've spoken about it before, but it's from the Guacamelee people. Brilliant side-scrolling 4-player local co-op game. They came out with this. It was an ARPG that was a little bit off the wall, but no local co-op. And then like 2 months into launch, update came in, and it just turns out that it's one of the best ARPGs available on the market, especially on the indie scene. There's 17 unique forms that you can take as a class or character, and all of them have at least 2 to 3 hotkey specials, and you are just lost in the madness that is the character selection of this game. And you can also switch out on the fly. This is new ground for ARPG, and its look. So unlike Children of Morta, you are given a semi-open world map choice and dungeons. Nothing moves around, there's no procedural generation. You can attack this like you would for any campaign. It's really great getting new characters opening new areas to the map, and you have to sort of build up a certain amount of points to get through gates, so there's a lot of teamwork here. There's also a lot of accolades and a system that opens up the new moves for the characters that evolves through using them frequently. I like that idea. It's not like just ranking up and all of a sudden you get something else. With this, if you drill down with someone you really enjoy playing with, they end up turning into a complete badass, and then they're your go-to character and new ones trickle off that. It's great having a set of 3 or 4 that you really enjoy, and the puzzles and dungeons are super weird. This was Game Pass day one. It was a massive win for that subscription service. It is available on the PlayStation 5 and 4 digitally, and I did spot a limited run physical for about 35 quid for the PlayStation 5. They are also constantly still updating it, adding really cool new stuff, levels and characters with different patches and updates. This game's only got better on a performance front as well. It's beautiful over on my PC, and I imagine that PlayStation 5 version is smooth as butter. Give me some comments. I will link my Local Co-op Diablo 4 video in description. It's not a terrible game at all, it's just not any of these. I've been Calvin. Oh, see you there.